From the great halls of their house, there are assembled three who hope to one day be the world's greatest driving heroes. Created from the cosmic legends of the universe comes our team captain, the Vision, Bill Fisher. Their soon-to-be Wonder Woman, Vicki Fisher. Our Captain Marvel and head flight trainee, Jennifer Skripchuk. And our Batman, the master of tools, gadgets, and all things mechanical, our mild-mannered soon-to-be billionaire, Alan Danvers. Their mission, to fight injustice, share what is right and wrong, to get you out of your house and come out racing with them, and serve all mankind. They are the Garage Heroes in Training Team.
Welcome to the Garage Heroes in Training Podcast. I'm going to be one of the hosts for this episode, and my name is Bill. Who else is hosting?
I'm Vicki.
I'm Jennifer.
I'm Tim. Oh. And Tim.
And we have Tim Fokine with us.
That's right. He's silly enough to start racing with us, so we figured, let's get a NASA instructor in here. Ooh.
So I didn't hear any theme music.
No theme music. Don't worry. We'll have the theme music plugged in later.
Okay.
We have episode number 350. And as with every 50 episodes, one of our favorite guests ever and our honorary in training helper, the best instructor we know, the best coach we know. Why he puts up with us, we don't know. Ross Bentley's back again. Hello, Ross.
Hello. And I'm waiting for the theme music too, and I'm thinking it's something like Gilligan's Island.
That's usually what's going through my mind when I'm going around the track, round and round. Especially the last time I was there with Tim. It was
I usually hear the clown music,
pretty much
on a replay like track all the time.
Yeah, I hear yakety sax personally.
So we peeking behind the covers. Ross is doing episode number 350 with us for the second time. So I guess this counts as number 700 too, Ross. I'm sorry, we had a technical goober called Bill Fisher who blew it. So
a technical goober, is that what you called it?
That's me.
Using all those high technical kind of terms that are going on there. Goober.
Technical goober.
Yep. But Ross squeezed in some more time, and he's back again. So Ross, appreciate the patience and the tolerance for our ineptitudes, and we will try to make this as painless as possible.
Always fun. We always have good conversations, and you always come up with tough questions that I have to make up silly answers for.
It's okay. That, as long as we know the first two words are always, it depends.
It depends.
Yeah. All right. So while the others are gathering from the long dock that we have, I had a question for you, which may apply to some other people. It's applied to me recently, and I think it's applied to Vicki and Jennifer in the past. I think they worked through it. But is there a way for someone to work through the self-preservation / fear threshold? Is there like some drills they could do or procedures they could do to kind of break their self-imposed limit and try to get there's more in the car and there's more in their driving skill? It's just a matter of, I don't know. I can't think of any politically correct ways of saying it.
Here we go. Ross. Boss Ross. Right. Honey, help me. I'm trying my best and I can't get through it.
It depends.
Okay. All right. Very well.
There you go. That's an episode.
Yep. And I would say it depends on like, what have you got going on in your head? Meaning some of the smartest people I know, they think about all the possibilities of things that could go wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And then there are some people who I'm not going to say are not smart, but there are some people that don't have those things going on in their head.
I think it's an age thing. The sub 25 male, no problem.
Actually, yeah, I totally agree that there is a certain amount of it that is an age-related thing, and actually, it has nothing to do with age. It has to do with what's going on in our life. And when we're 16, we don't have a whole lot of responsibilities. When we're 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, we've got a lot of other responsibilities, family, jobs, all sorts of different things, right? And so I think the key word there is, or the phrase that you used is self-preservation. And a lot of times that can be taken as fear. And sure, there could be like there could be fear of getting hurt. But for a lot of people, it's the fear of, what is this going to cost me? What am I not going to be able to do if I crash the car? What are people going to say about me? It's the fear of embarrassment, I think. There's all those things. So, so to get to your question, yes, that's a factor. And are there things that you can do? Yes. I've used this before. I say this all the time, is we do what we do because we're programmed to do so. And we sometimes don't do what we want because we don't have the right programming yet. And if our mental programming is, if I do this, that's going to happen, that bad thing over there is going to happen, then we need to change that programming. And we can do that programming through, physical experience. We can do it through mental imagery or visualization. Sometimes having a logical chat with somebody, or a conversation with somebody who just simply asks the question of, okay, how many laps have you done in your life? How many laps have you turned? How many corners have you driven through? How many times have you gone through a corner on the edge? And then how many times have you crashed? And you kind of go, wow, the likelihood of crashing is extremely low. So you start to think about it more analytically, and then over time you start to change your programming. The programming then becomes less about what could go wrong and, hey, what could go right? And I would say that certainly there are certainly people in this world who their natural programming is what could go wrong. And there are other people, their programming is what could go right. And the good news is that either one of those can be changed. And sometimes it changes through a circumstance. Something happens and all of a sudden, I know drivers who have driven for 10 years, never had a crash. They have a crash, and now all of a sudden they think they're going to crash every single time. When, statistically, that probably means you're going to go another 10 years before you have another crash. So I think that there's all sorts of stuff wrapped up in there. And, like I said, fear of the cost, fear of the hurt, fear of the embarrassment, fear of all those other things. But if you think about it in a very logical way, we're pretty safe. Yeah. And then there just comes I've used this before on the show, is I said, sometimes you just need to drive stupid. Meaning,
I'm still wondering if you have a comma in there or just throwing an exclamation point at the end. I'm not sure, but
yeah, just turn that brain off, stop thinking about what can go wrong, and just drive.
Maybe that's what it is, and it would probably be a lot better depending on where that turn is to really push it. Because if I see a tire wall at the end of it, then I'm not really comfortable with it. But if I see totally open field, maybe just go for it.
Yeah, and isn't that funny how the likelihood of crashing doesn't actually go up when there's a tire wall out there?
I know.
It's that old thing where, if I put a 2x6 laying on the ground and say, walk along that 2x6, it's easy. Put it up between two chairs, 3 feet off the ground. It's still pretty easy. Put it, across two buildings, 10 stories tall, and you're terrified. The risk really hasn't gone up any, and yet.
No, the risk to my car has. How about that?
Well,
yeah.
The likelihood of you falling off that 2x6 or you falling off that that, or crashing at that corner hasn't really gone up just because there's a tire wall there versus a big wide open field.
Yeah.
But the perception is, oh, it's way
Right.
more dangerous.
Right. But I'm just saying, like, maybe for me, if I'm going to try to push through my self-preservation, maybe I have to focus on those turns on those specific tracks that I don't have to worry about something that's hanging out there at the end of the field that I can actually crash into.
For sure,
You
it's
know.
a lot easier, right? It's a lot
Right,
easier.
right. But I mean, just to get through the self-preservation, to
Yeah.
know that I can do it.
Yeah.
And that there's not an obstacle out there that I could hit. Maybe that's, I'm just wondering what it is then, if it's even with without a tire wall out there, what it is. It's crazy. I should just let it go. Maybe what I need to do is actually spin out and then just get it over with.
Have you spun out?
Yes, I have.
Oh God, yes.
Yes. I have been pushing it. I think one of them was literally at Mid-Ohio, and I went off into China Beach. But
Nice.
but there was other cars on the road or on the track at the same time and spinning out. I guess it's frustration and a little fear, like maybe damage, but maybe I just need to get over the fact that it's damaged, because like damage can be fixed.
Yeah.
I don't.
When you went off, did anything bad happen?
No, nothing bad. I think the scariest part is at the end of that, on Mid-Ohio, at the very, very end of that track, was looking at all the oncoming traffic speeding towards me. That was terrifying.
Mm-hmm.
Because what if somebody else just did what I did and come out and join me, but maybe I'm focusing too much on that kind of stuff.
You don't like high speed braking zones.
I'm trying to get through them. So,
And then which comes first? I don't like high speed braking zones, or I'm actually not good at high speed braking zones?
Not good at. It's not that I don't like them. It's coming to the very end of that track and you know what? It is getting better. I mean, coming to the end of that track, at it coming so fast. But we did have a discussion about this before.
Mm-hmm.
And it was, don't look to your left, look to the turn.
Mm.
Look where you're turning in,
Right.
and lift up.
So I had a student who raced with us at our last race. And if you're familiar with NJMP turn 1 at Thunderbolt, we went through the entire weekend of HPD 1. It was her first, she's an experienced autocrosser, but it was her first time on track. We were preparing for a race. So we went through the entire weekend. I drove 3 stints. She drove 8 stints. Went through the entire weekend. At the end of the day, I take her up to the tower and I say, I want to ask you one thing. What is at the end of turn 1 as you're going straight down Thunderbolt? And she starts telling me all this stuff. And I said, go look what's at the end, because there's a stack of billboards there and a runoff of straight path of asphalt and then a big length of grass. She'd never seen it, never seen any of it, had no idea it was there.
And that's that. And I think we've had this conversation before around how great drivers really think about a corner with the end in mind. Mm-hmm. So they approach a corner and they know where the end of the corner is, and they actually know what it looks like and what it's going to feel like and everything. And really that's in their mind, not the, what do I need to do to get there? It's actually, once you kind of just put that end in mind, and, rather than China Beach at the end of the back street at Mid-Ohio, it's thinking about going up over the top and over Madness, and that's in your mind before you even get to turn 4.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, that sand will stop you. It just sucks you in.
Good.
Yeah. But
thankfully you're right.
Right. You come to a pretty good stop. But the other thing too is going from my Miata and into Bill's BMW. That was a sensation issue, but I think it's just and I'm trying to answer my own question here and trying to solve my own problem.
Good.
The near speed and not being accustomed to that speed and the power of the car that I'm driving, maybe it's just a form of desensitizing myself to it.
A lot of times when I see drivers that are, I guess, overreacting to the sensation of speed, sometimes it's as simple as they're not looking far enough ahead.
Okay.
Because, the farther ahead you look, it doesn't seem as fast. The other way, the nice way, or the best way to cure that is to drive a faster car.
Yeah.
I really think you need to get into a Formula One car or an Indy car, do some laps at Mid-Ohio, and then everything after that's just going to feel really, really
right.
slow.
Right.
Yeah. So there you go.
There
Fixed,
you go.
we're done.
Yes. Problem solved.
Yeah.
Well, that was easy.
Yeah. Like I said, it depends. It depends on whether you have a spare Formula One or Indy car laying around, because you go and do some laps, and that everything else will be easy. So
Yeah.
I might need 2 Indy cars. I got to fit, right?
Yeah. But I think, kind of going back to that, I think there is some, are you looking far enough ahead? But there's also the physical part of looking far ahead. And then there's what are you thinking about? Are you thinking far enough ahead? Because even if you are physically looking far ahead, but your mind is still just in front of the car, everything's going to feel fast. So again, it's the, heading down the back straight at Mid-Ohio, or heading into turn 1 at New Jersey. I mean, it's if your mind is already thinking around the corner, things kind of slow down.
Yeah.
So, to your question, Bill, are there some drills? I mean, certainly if you go out and deliberately practice physically looking farther ahead, but mentally thinking farther ahead. And, when you, for example, the back straight at Mid-Ohio, when you're approaching the turn 4, the right-hander at the end of the back straight, is your mind already thinking about going up and over the top of Madness? And if you go out and deliberately think about that while you're practicing, that's going to things are going to feel a lot slower.
Yeah.
Okay.
I know the one thing that Vicki has to stop doing, and maybe Jen too, I don't know if she stopped yet or not, but they used to freak out over the brake marker boards, because as they were going faster, it's like, and I'm like, stop looking at them. Look at the apex, or look further through the turn, ideally. But if you look at those brake boards, there's nothing else. But they're only going to freak you out. So
yeah, we've gotten much better about that, I would say.
Yeah, and I think we talked about that before, about looking more at your end of braking point and less at the beginning of braking point. And sometimes I wish we'd take those brake markers and remove them all, because that would kind of force you to just look at the corner and go, okay, I need to start braking now for that corner.
Yeah.
And it's certainly one of the things that drivers love to do. Where do you brake for that corner? Oh, I brake at the 3. Oh, really? I brake at the 2.5. It's a bragging point a lot of times. Yeah. And 9 times out of 10, they're all braking at the exact same place, but it's the perception of where you're braking that doesn't sometimes add up to where you're actually braking.
Makes good sense.
Okay.
I usually say I don't brake at all. Watch me.
Every corner is flat in 5th gear. Should be taken flat in 5th gear. Every single corner. I'm not going to say that you're going to make it.
Right, but you should try.
But you can enter every single corner flat in 5th gear.
Right.
Yeah.
Tim, you got a question?
Well, yeah, I actually, it's more of a comment than a question. When I first started instructing, I did Ross's instructor manifesto, and I was really impressed. And Ross, probably you don't remember this, but of course it was a big impression for me. But it was the dark, ugly part of the winter, and I'm doing the instructor manifesto, and I can't get racing out of my mind, and I'm just reading this, and I'm going, yeah, oh yeah. And every time I turn the page on my Kindle, I got deeper and deeper. Well, at the end of all that, I was so impressed that I wrote Ross a letter, and lo and behold, a week or less later, maybe even 2 days, I get a response from Ross. So Ross, I know that you're also a pilot, and so I know that you like to fly or have tried flying helicopters, and I'm wondering that the perception thing is huge, and I'm also a professional pilot, but the perception part of all this is a huge thing, and my biggest fear when I was trying to figure out if I was going to enjoy instructing or not was whether or not I would sit and be comfortable in the car. Now I'm very comfortable and I instruct, and that's not something that's a problem. But what I do kind of struggle with is how do I break off from instructing and know when to start coaching? You know, and like, what's that fine line, and what's that for you? And I know how to like, put the rest of it behind me, but how do I go, okay, listen, when we come around again, I want you to try this. And when's the appropriate time for that for a student?
It depends.
I knew that was going to be the answer.
So and just to clarify, I'm a wannabe pilot. I'm partway through.
After 33 years.
Well, and maybe that's the key to, as drivers. I'm a wannabe driver, right?
Right.
We're always on this journey or this mission to get somewhere and get better at this thing. And I don't think we'll ever get to the point where, okay, that's it, I've done it. So I'm partway through my helicopter training, and some little thing called the pandemic kind of got in my way. But a quick story about that, because it's kind of relating to what you're talking about, is I had through my helicopter training, I had two different instructors, and one of them I noticed after a period of time, fairly quickly, I always flew better with one of those than I did with the other one. And to me, the biggest difference was, and when I kind of sat back, I went, why is that? And the instructor that I didn't fly as well with, I don't think he trusted me, and maybe for good reason. but it just
that's self-preservation,
right? And he always, I always felt like he was just at any moment in time he was going to take the controls kind of thing from me. And even as in the very beginning, there were times where he needed to start to take some control. But as we progressed along and I got better, it wasn't like he was relaxing off of that and letting me do my thing. Whereas the other instructor let me do my thing. And, some of it was the self-preservation piece. I think one of the instructors was much more confident in himself in being able to handle what I did. And, hovering a helicopter, I've said, is probably one of the single most difficult skills that I've ever tried to tackle in my life. And when you're getting it, you never really think about a helicopter as it's a pendulum hanging in the sky. And, you make a little adjustment, it starts to go, and this pendulum starts swinging. And one instructor, like if it got just the tiniest little bit out of control, would grab the controls and take it away from me. The other one would let me kind of correct it and then bring it back. And I learned to correct it and bring it back. And, so to your question of when do you know, I guess, when to let go and let the student do their thing and do their learning. I think, it depends on your own confidence in yourself to how far are you willing to let your student go before you're going to rein them back in. Right. And, the difference in, instructing in an HPDE setting is unlike a aircraft where you have two sets of controls. You're sitting over in that passenger seat, and the only way you can rein a driver in is with your voice or maybe some hand signals. So you need to get enough experience where you're getting to the point where when or how much you can let somebody go and still bring them back. So I think that's part of the answer is that to the direct question of when to coach and when to instruct. And just, to clarify, I mean, for some people, they may go, what's the difference? I mean, to me, instructing is me telling you what to do. and coaching is me drawing out what you already know.
Mhm.
And
Hmm.
the simple part of that is, as a novice, brand new, you probably don't know a lot. So I need to do a lot of telling. And then as you gain more experience, you have some of those experiences, some of that knowledge. And it's my job as a coach to bring it out of you, because if I tell you something, it's probably not going to stick with you as long as if you figure it out yourself.
Mhm.
And so I think part of that is knowing when I can let it go, and sometimes just ask that question. And yeah, when we're spinning off the track, heading for China Beach, that's probably not the time for me to go, where do you think we're going to land here? And what could you have done differently? That's probably not going to help a whole lot. So
Right.
There's a point where just asking that question, it could be afterwards going, hey, we slid off the track in this corner. What could you have done differently next time? So some of it is in the heat of the moment. There may not be an appropriate time that may not be an appropriate time to be coaching, and other times when it is. My rule of thumb is I will always try to coach first. And if that doesn't work, then I'll tell you what to do.
That's a good rule.
So, and yeah.
Reese,
So-
you had something?
So for complete transparency, huge fan of Ross. Huge.
Yeah, it wasn't too hard.
What's
to
your
convince
address
Tim
again
to
for me
come
to
on.
send you the check?
That's right. Stickers.
Yeah. Sorry.
Reese, you had a
Swag.
question, I think.
So similarly, Ross, on the other side of things, as a novice instructor, I just went through my MSF level 1 and read your instructor manifesto. When somebody, I'm going to be doing an upcoming track day and getting in the car with somebody. Similarly, how would I approach that? Do I normally get into a novice's car and immediately start coaching, or do I normally start instructing when I'm in that beginning level 1 or level 2 sort of situation with a student?
It depends.
It depends.
And actually, so a great question, Reese, and kind of go into the the very first thing you do is you start off with that interview of the student, right? And you start to learn about them. And if in the conversation you find out, let's say they're a pilot, you might start to think about, okay, what could I ask? What could I draw out of them that is relatable to flying, that is going to, it's going to stick with them for a long time. I had a student one time that really struggled to understand the whole concept of a line. And as we were talking, we started this conversation about what they did. And I learned that they were an artist. And I said, draw me the line through a corner on this piece of paper. And they started drawing it. And it was like all of a sudden, everything, like the light bulb went on. And, like they're drawing these big, beautiful arcing lines through corners. And it was a piece of art when it was done. But that's what worked for them, right? So that's where I think, if in the very beginning, if you can just start to understand that student, and a lot of times we don't have that time. A lot of times we just got to jump in and we got to go, in which case you start off telling the student what to do, what you want them to do. And as they do more and more of what you ask them to do, and then you ask a couple of questions of why, kind of trying to get at do you understand why I'm telling you that? And the more they answer those in the way you want, guess what happens? Your trust in them begins to build. And that's where my pilot, my helicopter instructor, asked me some things, got to the point where he trusted what I was going to do most times. and I think then he became more of a coach than he did an instructor. And it's a balance thing. And again, there are times where, sorry, the best thing I can do right now is just say brake, or open your hand, unwind the steering wheel. And actually, sorry, that just brings another little side topic off of that, is the number of times we use language that means nothing to a student. You know, the times I've said unwind, unwind, unwind. I had at an instructor training session one time, I had a instructor tell me that they'd been using the phrase unwind the wheel, unwind, 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 coming out of all these corners. And at the end of the day, the student said, yeah, every time you told me that, I relaxed my shoulders and I got more relaxed. He thought when he said unwind, it was relax. So, it's really important. And a lot of times the easiest way is just to kind of double up on the words, like unwind the wheel, straighten the wheel. And immediately you've just defined what unwind the wheel means. Open your hands, unwind the wheel, straighten the wheel up, come out of the corner. You use 3 different words or phrases there. And pretty soon the student has just learned 3 different ways to understand that one instruction. And they're going to be that much more successful with other instructors going forward who might only use one of those phrases.
Right.
Hand signals help a lot. I found that, hand signals, driving a lap, especially when you talk about unwinding, helping them understand exactly how far you want to unwind, with your hands underneath the mirror so they can see them, works really well in that instance.
I agree 1,000%. I mean, that, and it's amazing how sometimes you'll get to the point where you stop talking and all you're doing is kind of just moving your hands, and out of the corner of their eye in their peripheral vision, they're seeing your hand movement and they mimic what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And so the hand thing, especially, again, in the beginning, you kind of say unwind as you're unwinding your hands, squeeze the brakes on as you're kind of doing this squeezing action with your hand, and releasing the brake pedal as you kind of pull your hand back, and you start doing those things. And eventually you can get to the point where you're not even saying anything, but you're just kind of moving your hands and the instructor is mimicking what you want them to do.
Yeah. The one thing I'd add, Reese, when you're doing it your first time, is I try my best. I write like a really long email and I give them my cell phone and say, just give me a call if you want to talk. And I hope they call me, because then I can talk to them and I can do it off track. I've got time. I can get the interview done and I can kind of understand where I'm at and what I'm getting myself into, and predict kind of what that Saturday is going to be or what that Sunday is going to be. And kind of have a plan. Obviously the plan is just a plan. It changes, but at least I've got a plan now, as opposed to, what am I getting myself into and not having any idea. So.
Yeah. And you begin that, you begin building the trust. I mean, if a student hears from you immediately and wants that, begins that conversation with you, you're building the trust in them and they're building the trust in you. So that's huge.
Yep. And if they have a Mustang, I just call the instructor director and say, hey, can I change students? That's fine. No problem.
And that goes back to the belief thing of, and what do you think that what do you believe that you're good at or not good at necessarily? So,
right.
Now we know what Bill thinks of Mustangs.
Oh, it's just the internet joke of the Mustang. But anyway, Who's next? Was it Vicki?
No, not me.
No?
I already have my question.
Oh, you did? Okay. Miss Jen, do you want to go? Or she's frozen.
She's frozen.
She might be frozen.
I'll go ahead and hop in.
Okay.
I got another question.
Reese. Reese, recent college graduate who has gotten a job with Ray Hall Racing.
Really?
Very cool.
Woohoo.
Right. We'll be interviewing Reese one-on-one shortly, but we thought we'd invite him on to talk to Ross. So welcome, Reese.
Thanks. So Ross, to tack on to the whole idea of being an instructor. So one of the most objective measures we use to look at somebody's driving skills is obviously some of their exit speeds. And then additionally, we look at like their consistency of their exit speeds and the consistency of their apexes. When you're looking at data, are you looking at percentage numbers? Are you looking at specific speeds? Are you looking just, hey, is he doing this like most of the time greater than like 50%? Or what are you looking at as a individual coming into racing, a novice, and then similarly, once you're advanced and analyzing the data, what are you looking at as an advanced driver?
Yes. I use that one instead of it depends.
I saw it depends coming on that one, Reese.
Yeah, because it does depend a little bit on the level. In the beginning, if somebody is relatively inexperienced, and that, like I said, relative is a relative term. Amazing. And I would look at consistency more than anything else. I tend to look at trends, and if I'm looking at data and you're just looking at the speed trace, if you take 5 laps and overlay 5 laps of their speed trace, and you see this corner is pretty much the same every single lap. This one's got a little variance. This corner over here has a lot of variance. I'm going to say that's where they're struggling the most. So then it would be, okay, what are they struggling with? And with experience, you can get to the point where you can look at a speed trace and you can start to identify just some simple little things around, okay, they're lifting off the gas pedal, the throttle before they start to brake, and they're coasting for a little bit. Or you can see that the shape of the speed trace comes down and immediately goes back up again. And there's no kind of what we call a hockey stick, where you can actually recognize some trail braking into a corner. And a lot of inexperienced drivers don't even know what trail braking is, and that's okay. But to me, I'll take trail braking out of it. All we're talking about here is a smooth brake release. And if I see the speed trace come down and immediately kind of either flatten out or go up, it's like they've just come in and just popped their foot off the brake pedal. So, I might start to look for trends like that. And, as a driver progresses in their development, you need more tools. You start to need to look at more than just the speed trace. You might need to look at lateral and longitudinal G's is a simple one, and it tells you a lot of good stuff. But as you go further along, hopefully we can look at brake pressure and throttle position and maybe even steering angle. But for sure, I like to look for trends first. I see a lot of people use data, and what they do is they focus on one lap, their fast lap, and go, let's just analyze that to death and figure out what to do better. And if you look at it, you go, well, actually, what they did on that one lap doesn't really represent what they do a lot of other laps. And so you need to look at some other laps, I think, and start to figure out what the trends are. So I'm not sure if I've really answered your question there, but I like to, and it's almost, I guess I'm going to say now, it's almost any level of driver, but I'm going to look for trends first, maybe then start looking at, is there a consistency problem, and where is the inconsistency? Because that's where the driver is struggling the most. And then you can start to work on more of the technique kind of things to really try to clean those areas up, looking at the data.
So additionally to, I guess, add on to or tack on to that in my question. So I've been doing a lot more data focus while also getting into a new car this year. What is your best advice to a driver that's plateaued? Normally, looking at the data, I'm hitting 78, 79, 80, 81, 82% of the apexes, and then it's about the same percentage for consistency on exit speeds. What would you do when you hit a plateau like that, especially when analyzing your data?
So let me guess, you graduated with an engineering degree?
No, he went there. Yes, he did.
No, actually,
it's worse.
Or something in statistics or something?
No, I'm a physics major. Well, I graduated physics.
Okay. Kind of all had to be, you had to go somewhere in there. So yeah. Because when you're going 79%, 79, I mean, wow. So I guess I'm big on having a very deliberate, strategic approach to practicing. And a lot of my approach, for example, if you are hitting, if your exit speeds are good 80% of the time, I might just ask you a simple question of what percentage of the lap are you spinning at full throttle? And by the way, don't look at your computer. Just what does your gut tell you? What percentage of the lap did you spend with your foot flat to the floor at full throttle? And again, it's difficult for some people not to go, well, let me go and look at the data. Well, no, I just want your gut feeling out of this. And if your gut feeling says 40% of the lap or 90% of the lap or 62% of the lap, I don't care. But then I would say, if you said 60% of the lap, I'd say, okay, the next time you go on track, I want you to spend 63% of the lap at full throttle, which means every single time you come out of the corner, I want you just to be aware of, can I get to full throttle a little sooner? Can I get to full throttle just a little sooner? And just working on just that part of it even. Because a lot of times, again, we do what we do because we're programmed to do so. You may be coming out of the corners and hitting your same exit speed every single lap because that's your programming. That's the way you drive. That's your habit, right? And until you become more aware of what you're doing now, you're probably not going to change that. So if you just simply do a practice session where all you do is think, where am I getting to full throttle coming out of this corner? Where am I getting to full throttle? Could I get to full throttle just a fraction of a second earlier? You probably are going to start to see some improvements. Is it going to be drastic? Maybe. Or is it going to be really subtle and a little bit? Yeah, it could be. But it's all worthwhile. And as we know in this silly sport that we're involved in, if you can do something and you go 1/100th of a second faster, you go, yay.
You're jazzed.
Yeah. We get really excited over fractions of a second. So that would be one of the things. And again, part of the great thing is that you do have a metric. And when you have that metric, it gives you a real good awareness of where you are now. And then at least you can start to work on that. If it's, how many apexes are you hitting? There comes a point in time where I would say, I don't really care. Because I think sometimes we get so caught up in I got to hit that apex. I got to hit that apex. I got to hit that apex, that we drive slow enough to hit all those apexes. And if we just think about, I'm just going to drive the car and I'm going to sense what the car is telling me. I'm going to feel what the car is telling me. And I'm going to go, does it feel like I can get on the gas sooner? Does it feel like I can release the brakes sooner and flow 1 mile an hour more through the corner? If it doesn't, what would happen if I did just take my foot off the brakes that fraction of a second earlier, flow 1 or 2 miles an hour more through the corner? Kind of going back to what we talked about earlier, the self-preservation thing, probably nothing bad is going to happen. The car might slide around a little bit, but you're going to learn something from doing that. And then you start to realize that, hey, there's something there. I can use a little bit more of that. So there are times, again, where I'll just say to drive stupid. Turn your brain off, stop thinking, stop being so analytical, and just drive and feel the car.
Awesome.
So I have a question.
Yes.
Did I freeze?
Nope, you're good.
Okay.
We can hear you.
Go, Jen, go.
Okay. Well, let me ask it really quick.
Yeah.
What should you look at when reviewing?
Oh, dang.
Uh-oh.
I think she said, what should you look at when you're reviewing your data, like to begin with?
I don't think that's what she said.
Well, she froze, so I'm guessing right now.
Okay,
Jen.
next.
Okay, next. Alan, do you have a question?
We'll get back to Jen.
Oh, Alan needs a doc.
Alan's on 50 mutes. Okay. Ross, from our Frozen episode that got lost in time, I asked you the greatest. Oh, here we go. She's back.
Try it
Say it
again,
again,
Jen.
Real quick.
Do it really fast.
Which should somebody look at when reviewing driving video, like their own?
Oh, video. Oh, wow. Interesting
that's
question,
an
because
episode.
I'm that's going to be a big topic in a very near, actually probably by the time this goes, a past issue of Speed Secrets Weekly. So that's top of mind for me right now. What should you do when you're reviewing video? Like, the first part of this is, it depends. Are you looking at your video, or you're looking at somebody else's video, and or do you have your video and somebody else's video to compare it to? Let's just pretend here for a minute that all you have is your own video. You don't have anything to compare it with. You haven't been able to share, look at it. You've got somebody, some pro driver's video to look at. You're just looking at your own video. First thing that I look at is simply, are you using enough track? And a lot of times you'll be watching your video and you realize that when you approach a corner, that you kind of, I call it crabbing in from the edge of the track, where you come up to the ear and the tires are right on that edge of the track. But just before the turning point, the car starts to pull off the edge. And by the time you really turn into the corner, the car is 3 feet away from the edge of the track. You've just tightened up the radius of that corner. So you're not going to be able to flow as much speed through that corner. So the first thing that I look at is just simply, are you using all the track? It may be that you're on a track that you have tons of experience with, but it may be a track that you don't, and you don't know really what the line is. So as you're watching your video, you might ask yourself, what would happen if I turned in later here? What would happen if I turned in earlier here? What would happen if, as I clip past the apex, I kind of hold the little wheel in and I hold the car and let it rotate around a little bit more? Would I be able to get back to power earlier? Could I use a little bit more track exiting this corner? So a lot of times the video, all it does is it helps you generate some questions. And by the time you finish asking yourself those questions, the next time you go on track, some of those you're going to start to do. So that would be the sort of the next thing that I would look at. A lot of times watching videos, I might start to look at some reference points. And, as we talked about earlier, the begin of braking point is not the most important braking point. It's the end of braking point. But you might just want to look at from lap to lap to lap and realize from the video, and maybe just all you can do is tell by the sound, but you may just realize that you lift off the throttle at the 4 marker, but you really you could see the nose of the car really start to dip at the 300 marker. Well, what does that tell you? Probably means that you lifted off, coasted, and then braked. So you can start to pick that up on the video. You might look at, going back to Reese's question about the data, is you watch a number of laps and you realize that corner looks pretty consistent. That corner looks pretty consistent. This corner, wow, from one lap to the next, my braking is different. Where I turn in is different. I really don't quite understand that corner very well. So it might lead you to go, okay, I need to go and watch somebody else's video. I might need to go and talk to an instructor. I might need to talk to another driver and just say, hey, could you watch this particular corner and tell me what I'm doing right and what I'm doing wrong? Which leads to another part of that is, when I watch videos, a lot of times all we ever do is look at what am I messing up? And I think it's important to also look at, what are you doing well? Because if you're doing something well, do more of that. Like, if you realize that wow, I brake really hard for that corner, but I'm not in these other corners. Well, okay, that might tell you that you're capable of doing that. So go do more of that in those other corners. If you have the camera on the angle where you can see yourself using the controls, the steering wheel, and even the pedals, even better. And one of the things that I look at, a lot of times somebody will send me a video. They'll send me one of their videos, and I'll watch it and I'll go, wow, they're absolutely on the perfect line all the way around the track, but they're slow. And I see them go through the corner and they turn into the corner and the wheel is absolutely dead still. And in their mind, they're probably thinking, got to be smooth, got to be smooth, got to be smooth. Well, they're so smooth that they're slow. And if you see your hands working the steering wheel and there's really not much in the way of any kind of correction whatsoever, you might be thinking, wow, I'm really smooth. Yeah, but you're not driving the car at the limit. When you're driving a car at the limit, there are going to be some corrections as you go through the corner. So if I'm watching a video and I don't see any corrections going on whatsoever, I know that the driver can carry more speed through those corners, in which case that might come from moving the whole brake zone in, braking lighter, braking later, all these different things. So that's where I'm going to start. If I have video that I can actually see footwork, then you can start to really dig into that. First thing I'm going to look for is how do I release the brake pedal? If I see my foot popping off the brake pedal, that's probably also going to notice the front of the car kind of popping up and becoming unloaded, and then me struggling with the rest of the corner. So those are some things. Those are just a few things you can look at. You can also listen to gear changes and start to figure out whether you're in the right RPM range or not, or whether you should upshift and back down again or whatever for a corner. So you can learn some things about your shift points as well. Reese?
So I promise I'll shut up after this and
Lies.
So Ross, to add on to that, I feel like a really good follow-up question is last weekend I spent the weekend at Gingerman with NASA Great Lakes, right? I was looking at the data and I was told by Eric Meyer that I needed a reference point of somebody faster in my own car. So I was lucky enough to have Tom O'Gorman be there, and he hopped in my car. Thanks, Tom, if you're listening.
Yeah.
But
you're wishing that he listens.
He might. You don't
So
know.
am
He
I.
might be. He's a good dude.
But how do you know when your driving style is different than somebody else's? So when Tom hopped in the car, I looked at the data, did the sectors and everything like that. Tom was about a second and a half faster than me. And I did obviously the breakdown to the math. That's if he's a second, that's less than a tenth in every corner. But my driving style is I'm smooth, right? And I'm doing small corrections. Tom, it has those autocross hands. He's throwing the car around, and it's a small time difference across the track. But how do you know when to trust your own skill and maybe chase that faster driver's lap?
So a couple of comments. One is, for sure, having somebody else drive your car and then you comparing your data to their data, it's going to help you learn some things for sure. The one downside is of that method is you're kind of learning through the copycat method. You really just go, okay, well, if he or she can go through that corner at 82 miles an hour, I'm going to go through there at 82 miles an hour, and you go and do it. But you haven't really learned how to sense that, how to do that on your own. And, so that's the first part of, yes, sometimes having somebody else drive your car and getting that data is really helpful. Usually it's a quick fix, but a different approach could be, how can I figure this out on my own and get there on my own? Because, wow, that is going to stick with you forever. So that's maybe a side comment to that whole approach.
Yeah, just to let you know, I also rode in the car with him, so I was looking for either visual references or markers and stuff like that, and then how his steering input, his gas, his throttle modulation, stuff like that.
Yeah. So again, you're seeing all that, and then you go, now I'm going to copy that. Again, quick fix. It's going to help you for sure. Absolutely for sure. And it's one of the tools we use. You could take that to an extreme, and let's just like a really big extreme is you're at the track for the third time in your life. Lewis Hamilton shows up, gets into your car, and now you have Lewis Hamilton's data, and you go, I'm going to go copy him. Well, sorry, you don't have the skills yet to do that. And Tom is an incredibly skilled driver. The fact that you're within a second or second and a half or whatever means that you're really, really good as well, because Tom is brilliant. One of the things that I think is sometimes gets confused is this smooth is fast thing, because Tom is actually really smooth. But if you watch him in the car, he doesn't look smooth, but the car is smooth. And I think that's where the confusion is sometimes, where a driver can be going through the corner or driving around a track and they're using the controls so smoothly that, again, they're not quite at the limit. Whereas a guy like Tom is driving the car at the limit and the car is moving smoothly. Again, it may look at times a little sideways and things like that, because I've seen Tom drive. But the inputs are busy sometimes, but they're smooth at the same time. And then, I mean, you can get a driver who is herky jerky and they're not going to be as fast. I think the key to what Tom is doing is what you're seeing him do something that results in the car being driven smoothly. And it's easy to take that visual of him with his hands and catching it and everything. That just tells me, I mean, he's driving that car at the limit. And, I guess the one other thing that I kind of comment on that is sometimes you can get a guy like Tom or somebody else who hops into your car and they drive it for 5 laps or 20 laps, whatever it is, and they go fast. But if you gave them more laps, their speed might not improve a whole lot more, but everything would the controls, everything would get dampened. It would just smooth out a little bit more. And they might find another half a tenth or something like that. Like, it's not going to be a huge improvement in lap time, but consistency and not having to work quite so hard to go that fast, and but not having to be quite so busy to go that fast happens. So you'll see that sometimes when somebody who's really good gets in your car for a few laps, they're not as smooth and tidy as they would be if they had even more laps. So I don't know if that helped answer that question or not, but Tom's a good guy to have as a model.
Yeah. I think those laps that Reese gave him in his car was the reason why he swept the entire weekend for Grid Life last weekend.
Right. So. That was Reese and coached him along.
Good way to help Tom out there, Reese. Nice job.
Yeah.
Captain's log supplemental.
Miss Vicki.
Yes, sir.
You know what?
What?
I've been thinking about this Sentinel system.
Yeah. Tell me about the Sentinel system.
So what I was thinking was, we have the one car that's got the aim dash that's slowing us down. Because installing the aim dash is it probably is easy, but it's quite hard the first time. And we haven't figured that out yet. The Sentinel system is really easy to set up. So what I was thinking was, why don't we put it in the Lemons car? And we'll worry about the aim data information separately. And we'll kind of break it down into a project. Because then we'd have the motorsports video system that we really, really want, and we'd be able to stream it. We just won't have the data inside, but we have the data outside, so we can combine them later. But I think that's a really good solution.
So what does this Sentinel system do?
Well, if it had the aim data, it would have all the data on the screen, and you could see all their telemetry and everything live. But we'd be able to not only record it for viewing after the race, but we could actually watch our car during the race.
Ooh, like on the monitor and everything?
On a monitor, if you were at home and I was at a track, or if you were at the track and I was at home, depends on who gets the short straw, but we'd be able to watch each other.
It's something I've always wanted to do.
And you know what? If you're driving, you know what you can do on the Sentinel system?
What's that?
You can communicate to me with your hands, and I can't do a thing about it.
Even better.
So, if you need to give a wave or a Jersey wave, whatever you need, we could save it and see it on the screen. And then you can have up to 3 different cameras, and it'll have picture in picture. You'll have the basic main shot out the front window, and then 2 cameras where you put them wherever you want. One could be on the driver, or one could be on the rear view. It's kind of cool.
Then we can upload it onto YouTube.
We could bore millions of people on YouTube.
I love it.
All right. Very well. You know what the only downside I see about this?
But
Your mom and my mom are going to be panic stricken the entire weekend watching this thing to see if everything's going well.
this is true.
We probably shouldn't tell them.
I like the idea of having a Sentinel.
Mm-hmm. Well, luckily we have maybe 2. Depends on how things go. We're going to try. All right. That sounds like a plan. That's the project. We got to get that ready for the next race.
Sounds great.
All right. Very well. Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Danvers, welcome back to the podcast.
Yes. Hello.
Alan!
What's up, Alan?
Just had to do a quick run for some rear brake pads. Nothing to worry about. We'll have it run in the morning. So I one question here. It talks about the importance of patterns and anticipation versus reacting.
Another topic that I just finished writing something about recently is the difference between anticipating and expecting. So maybe that's slightly different than what you're asking about but a lot of drivers will go into a corner expecting the car to understeer, expecting the car to oversteer. And when you put it's maybe related to what we talked about in the very beginning here. When you put an expectation in your mind, guess what's going to happen? You're going to react to that. So if you put the expectation of my car is going to understeer, my car is going to oversteer, you cannot almost help but slow down just that tiny little bit to anticipate it. Or again, it's more of an expectation, I think. And for me, I think, for sure, what the very best drivers do is they will enter a corner. They're prepared for the car to understeer or oversteer, but they're not expecting it. They go into a corner knowing I'm going to deal with whatever I've got. And, I just finished writing something, and I was like, Elio Castroneves heading down the front straightaway at the Indy Motor Speedway. He comes to turn 1. Does he expect that his car is going to understeer or oversteer and therefore going to lift off the gas? Heck no. He's going to keep his foot planted in it, turn in, and then deal with whatever he's got. And it might be a little breathe of the throttle. It might be a little bit steering, a little bit less steering. At those speeds, it's tiny little movements, but he's not expecting it. He's just going to turn it in. He's going to turn in the corner and then deal with it. He's going to manage it. And that's what the very, very best drivers do. Obviously, you have to have a lot of belief, a lot of trust in your own car control skills that you can do that. But I think that's a difference between when you expect something bad going to happen versus I'm prepared for something bad to happen. So I'm just going to go in there and I'll deal with it when it happens.
I think we lost Alan. He's quiet again. So Ross, there was an article I read, and I don't remember where it is. It could have been you. I'm sorry. The author was a good driver, and he was saying that he would force the car to react, expecting it to behave in a certain manner, as opposed to letting the car get into the turn and then seeing what they got. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yeah. And I mean, I've written about that, and I don't know who or what you're talking about there, and in what you heard or read or something there. But, I wrote about this in one of my books, even, is when I learned to be fast driving in the rain was when I entered the corner and deliberately went into the corner slightly too fast. And therefore I knew, like, I was making the car understeer in this case, in the rain. It's certainly certainly an easier or more predictable situation to enter the corner, a little bit too much speed, come off the brakes, get the car to understeer a little bit, and then go, okay, I've got understeer. I'm going to keep working with this all the way through the corner. But if you come into the corner and you don't know what it's going to do, you turn into that corner thinking, okay, I'm on the edge. And then the car steps out, whether it understeers or oversteers. Now you're reacting to that. And your reactions are never going to be as fast as if you are anticipating it, making it do what you want it to do. So I learned that about driving in the rain years ago. And then that actually, you apply that to driving in the dry, and it's no difference. So again, the very, very best drivers go into the corner and then deal with what they've got. It's almost the part of the problem is we're told very early on when we start getting on driving on tracks, go into the corner slow, come out fast. Well, sometimes when you go into the corner slow, you then start to pick up the throttle, and then that causes some understeer or some oversteer, and you've caused this problem. So sometimes the best thing you can do is just carry more speed into the corner than you think. It's the go into the corner fast and come out even faster method. And again, it takes some trust, some confidence, some belief in your abilities to control that. And maybe that's sort of going back to our very beginning, is some of the training, some of the practice time to develop the car control skills, where you can start to trust that if I enter the corner and the car understeers, or if I enter the corner and the car starts to oversteer, it's okay. I got it. And I got it until I don't got it. But you go in there with that approach. And again, if you come into the corner too slow and then have to try to react to what the car does, you are reacting to it. And it's tough to react fast enough in a car on a racetrack. We're just moving too fast.
So I'm going to take us back to instructing, Ross, and really think about like a student that's having a bad time, and what's your technique for rebuilding confidence in somebody that's maybe had an off, that's really kind of having a hard time, still wants to go out, but is just really timid now because of a bad experience?
Great, good one. And for me, I'm always looking at drivers, and I always say that we have scales on the side of our heads, and the scale, one scale is confidence and one scale is skills. And our goal as instructors is to keep those scales moving up together, kind of step. When you get somebody where their skills are low and their confidence is high, that's usually going to be a bit of a challenge. But you're talking about the opposite, where something's happened and now their skills might be here, but their confidence level is down below that. Right. And so you have to do a little bit of confidence building, because what somebody does, or what somebody does that lacks confidence, is they don't do something. Like the car steps out and they kind of give up a little bit. They just don't have the confidence to do what's needed. It's kind of related to what we were just talking about there. They're going to go into a corner and they're not going to have the confidence or the trust that they can deal with it. So they tend to react slower because of that. So part of the job of the instructor at times is to manage that confidence level. And you may end up having to, yes, you have to build their confidence. How do you do that? First of all, be very focused on the act, not the person. So rather than you're really smooth, hey, you drove smoothly that lap or that session. Because if I say you're really smooth and then something bad happen, your immediate reaction is, I'm not smooth. and by the way, I'm also a bad person. So the feedback has to be around the act or the behavior and not the person. So that's the very first thing. The second part of that is I like to ask right questions, and this is typically after the session. But I might ask the person. I might say, the driver is, what did you do well that session? What worked? What did you do right?
Right.
And I could sit there and tell them what they did. But if they answered that question, if they say, well, I think my line was really good. And I'm go, yes, it was. And, especially I noticed that your line through this particular corner was dead on the mark. So fantastic. What else did you do right? Well, I found myself looking far ahead. Yes, fantastic. I could tell that because of the way you use the controls. So I'm going to ask these questions. And when somebody tells themselves what they did right, it tends to build their confidence from the inside even more so than if I just say, hey, you're really smooth, your line was good that session. And there's a time and a place for those things, for that feedback for me, especially if somebody is really struggling they're really kind of down, is like, yeah, man, I just messed up, or they're the kind of person that beats themselves up a lot. Sometimes I might have to kind of prime the pump a little bit and say, what do you think about your smoothness that session? Or what do you think about your line? What about how far ahead were you looking? So I might have to ask a few questions that kind of helps prod them along to say, yeah, I did that well. And the extreme, I've had that student who, every time you ask them, what'd you do well? And they go, well, nothing. I just sucked that, and I went off here, I dropped the wheels here. I wasn't looking far enough. And at that point, I'll usually kind of lighten the mood by saying, you're right. Get out of the car. I got a baseball bat. I'm going to start beating you up here. Like, you are just you are worthless here. And then laugh about it. And at least that kind of relaxes everybody. And then it's like, okay, now that we got that out of the way, now we've beaten you up. Let's go the other way here for a little bit. What did you do well? So that works. Obviously, in the car, in the moment, you can't have that kind of a conversation. So what I might do is, just as we come out of the corner, I go, oh, it felt great, didn't it? And if the person says yes, and or as they're coming out of the corner is like, how did that feel? Ooh, that felt actually pretty good. Like, I'll pick a corner where they did it really well, and I'll go, what was that like? Yeah, that one worked well. So I'm going to find things that they did well, and then kind of draw out what they got out of that. And then sometimes it's as simple as, hey, great line to that corner, or, nice brake release, or things like that. What I try to avoid is the attaboys or the attagirls, the, hey, nice job. Because sometimes people go, okay, that felt good, but what did I do right?
Right.
So you need to be, I guess, precise about it, or focused on what it is the person did right.
So what I like to do, and I'd like a little feedback from you, is I like to, at the end of a session, whether it was good, bad, or ugly, we stop the car, we get out of the car, take our helmets off, take a breather, and then I unfold the track map, and I say, hey, tell me what went really bad. And of course, they can immediately pick the one or two things that they've done horribly. And then I go, but wait, what went good?
Yeah.
And then I build off of that. But what technique you think is kind of like an in-between? How do you say, hey, those were all really good things, but man, this is really, how do you get that middle ground? What's your technique for like a middle ground speech versus either a great or not so great speech?
Well, Tim, just what you said there, that sucked. That was terrible. I think you're completely wrong.
Yeah, it was horrible.
I know. I can't believe him sometimes.
I know. I can't believe they even invite me on this show.
Yeah.
You accepted the pay rate.
Are you paying double now?
Double. Easily double. After this, we might triple.
We might need a physics major to figure out what is 00.
He'll tell you. I guarantee it.
Probably, yeah.
So I guess to answer your question, so you can kind of go with the, hey, what did you do well? What could you do better? And then it's like, I always phrase it as, what can you do better? Not that's what you did. You sucked at that. That was terrible.
Right.
It's what could you do better? Because everybody can do everything better. And sometimes I'll even like, okay, on a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being you're perfect, how were you at that? And, they might be really hard on themselves and say, I was a 3. Okay, next session, let's try to move that to a 4 or a 5. What would that look like to you? What would you need to do to take that from a 3 to a 5, or from a 7 to a 9, or whatever? So I think just phrasing it as, we're always here, we're just trying to improve everything. And, putting it in that framework. And I'm a big fan of using that kind of on a scale of 1 to 10.
Mm-hmm.
Because, and by the way, if you get to a 9 and 9.5, we're gonna recalibrate your scale and move that 9 back down to a 7. So we've got some more room to work in here, right?
Right,
Mm-hmm.
right.
But I think that's a really, from my experience, that has worked really well with a lot of people. Just because it's sort of a, your last session, you said your vision was a 6 out of 10. Okay, I want you to work on making it a 7 or an 8 this next session. What is that going to mean? Well, I need to look farther ahead. I need to look through to the exit of the corner. I need to keep my eyes moving a little bit more. I actually also need to be more aware of what's in my mirrors and stuff. Well, having the sort of that 360 degree. And if they're not saying those things, you might just say, what about the mirrors? Oh yeah, I got to be more aware of those too. How far ahead should you be looking? And what about, is that also related to how far ahead you're thinking as well? And, so you might have to kind of prod them a little bit with those things, but get them to have a really good mental model of what it is they're going to do to move from a 6 to an 8 next session. And then, okay, let's go on the next session. Remember what our goal was for the next session? It was to move from a 6 to an 8 with our vision skills. Okay, great, let's go. And at the end of that session, you go, how was that? Did you move it? And they go, yeah, I did. It wasn't an 8, but I got it to a 7, I think. Hey, awesome, great. We're making progress. And then you could just keep working away at that.
That's great technique. I like that linear goal technique.
And I will say that some people have a hard time with that whole concept, but
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to say that at least 90% of the drivers that I've ever worked with, it works.
Yeah, that's interesting. I'm stealing your technique, Ross.
Good. And that other 10% that it doesn't work, you just beat them with a baseball bat. So yeah.
Let me say it again. I'm stealing your technique again.
I was going to say.
Well, you know what? I don't remember who, but I know I stole that from somebody else. So
Right. Those are the best instructors, right?
Yeah. I mean, when was the last time somebody came up with an original thought? Must have been thousands of years ago. I don't know, because everybody just keeps modifying these things and using them.
Right. There is that stone wheel thing.
Yeah. That was a good one. Yeah. But and actually, there's that makes me think. I mean, a lot of my approach to coaching and instructing and everything. I've had people say, you sound like some Greek philosopher or something like that. Yep, it's been handed down through
right
centuries.
Time tested, right? Time
yeah,
tested.
I mean that's just it works with people, right? So.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, with those stone wheels, they used to early apex a lot too, because the traction friction circle.
Yeah, and the chariot races.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I could see that.
I'm old enough to have been there.
My days back at the Coliseum.
Yeah.
Miss Vicki, you gonna wrap it up for us tonight?
Yeah. How much time do we have?
Somewhere between 2 and 4.
Okay. I'm going to give it
minutes or hours or whatever.
Yeah. Okay. I have one thing, and I feel like an idiot because I've been 4 years into racing and I still don't understand. and that is a friction circle. I don't know how to read one. I don't know what it is. It's a circle with scribbles on it. I have no idea what it means. I just nod my head, but I haven't got a chance to actually have somebody explain it to me. Can you discuss that?
No, I can't.
Okay. I
No,
don't, I literally have no
I'm joking.
idea what it does.
So I'll explain it in a couple of different ways here.
Okay.
The simple way to answer that is it doesn't really matter. Like this whole friction circle thing or traction circle thing doesn't really matter. All it really means is when you are braking into a corner, let's say we're using 100% of the tire's traction for braking.
Mm-hmm.
As we get to the turn-in point, if we ease our foot off the brake pedal, there comes a point where our foot comes off the brake pedal a little bit, and we're at 90% of the tire's traction is being used for braking. But we're starting to turn the wheel into the corner, and we're using 10% of the tire's traction for cornering.
Mm-hmm.
And then eventually our foot comes off the brake a little bit more, and then we turn the wheel a little bit more. And at one point we're at 50-50. 50% of the tire's grip is being used for braking, 50% is being used for cornering. And then eventually it's 90-10 the other direction. And then eventually we're using all the tire's grip for cornering. And then as we start to squeeze on the gas pedal, we feed in a little bit of throttle, we feed in a little bit of the gas, and we start to accelerate a little bit. We have to unwind the steering wheel, open up our hands, straighten the steering wheel. So we open that up. And so now we get to a point where, let's say we're using 25% of the tire's traction for accelerating and 75% for cornering, then 50-50, then 25-75. And then eventually the steering wheel is straight and we're 100% throttle. Now, obviously there is a little bit of overlap there, and that has to do with the way tires work and stuff. But essentially that's it. It's that overlap of the braking, cornering, and acceleration forces. And if you do that, and then the other way you can look at this is, the fuzzy dice you have hanging from the mirror.
Mm-hmm.
Let's pretend there's a pen hanging from that.
Mm-hmm.
And let's pretend you have a piece of paper underneath that pen.
Right.
And as you brake, that pen's going to draw a line up going forward, because the load transfer going forward swings the pen forward, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then if you just took your foot off the brake pedal back to zero and then immediately turn the steering wheel, the pin would come back to the middle, and then it would swing out to the side. Mm-hmm. But if we, as we did just talked about, if we overlap the release of the brake pedal with the part of the turning into the corner, that pin would actually start to kind of arc around, and it would draw part of a circle. And then as you got to that point where it's at maximum accelerate or maximum cornering, as you start to feed in the gas pedal and start to accelerate, it's going to start to swing to the back of that circle. As you start to unwind the steering wheel, as you start to take away the cornering forces and give it more for the acceleration forces, you're going to end up drawing this. Now we're going to have half a circle going around that one corner in that one direction. And then if the next corner is going the opposite direction, again, swing's going to go forward. The pin's going to swing out the other direction. And you're going to, if you drive perfectly within that, you're going to end up with something like a circle. Now, it never is a circle, because our cars don't have enough horsepower. We don't have enough power to actually draw. We can usually brake. Let's say we can brake at 1G.
Mm-hmm.
Most cars can't accelerate at 1G.
Right.
So the bottom of that circle ends up being kind of a little flatter. So, and then, in the data system, you can plot all that out, and you get this big squiggly GG diagram, and it looks like this big mess of lines and stuff like that. And you look at it and you go, okay, what do I do with that? If between the braking axis, which is the y-axis going up and down, if it goes up and then it sort of comes back around back towards the middle part, and then it swings out, and it's not filling up that part of the whole circle over there, that just means you're not using all the grip level as you're entering the corner. And same thing on the acceleration side.
Okay.
This would be a whole lot easier if I was allowed to use my whiteboard.
Yes. Yes.
As opposed to all these hand signals that I've just been doing here. And everybody on the podcast is going, what hand signals? Yeah. Yeah.
That's
So
right.
Ross, would the best shape in your mind for a traction circle or friction circle look like a figure eight almost?
It depends. It depends. So for one particular corner, it's going to look like a half circle, because it's going to go up here, and then it's going to swing around as it goes to full cornering, and then a flattened bottom of that circle because it doesn't have enough acceleration forces. But that would be just one corner. Now, if the next corner went in the exact same direction, again, it was a left-hand corner, then that circle is going to draw the same shape again and the same shape again. But if it then went to a right-hand corner, then it's going to break and it's going to swing around the other direction. So it's not exactly a figure eight, but it's, again, ultimately, it's going to end up as close to this kind of circular shape as possible. And again, then you get into all sorts of other things like, if you have a car that has massive braking abilities, but not very good cornering abilities, you end up with a longer, skinnier circle. If you have a car that has lots of cornering ability, but not so much braking and acceleration, you get kind of a fatter one in the middle. So yeah, but ultimately what it's trying to do, the friction circle or the GG diagram that you can get from a data system, is help you realize or learn or become more aware of, are you using all the capabilities of the car? Because if I come up to a corner and I brake hard, I'm using all the braking ability. But if I lift my foot off the brake pedal, then turn the wheel, there's a moment in time, a small moment in time, where I'm not maximizing all the traction. I'm not using 100% of the tire's traction. I might be braking 100%, then at 0%, then at 100% cornering, and then at 0 cornering, and then 100% acceleration, and then not. So that's just telling me that I'm not using a circle. It ends up being shaped more like a plus sign.
Mm-hmm. The one thing I do, Vicki's usually seeing her friction circle on the Apex Pro app that we use, is I try and the simplest thing I do when I'm trying to work with her on that is I try to get as few dots in the center and as much to the outside as possible, because that means you're spending more of the time towards the limit, whatever the limit is. But the dots in the middle are really the ones that concern us.
Yeah, because you're not using all the tire's traction at that point, all the car's capability.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And again, it tells you to overlap the use of the controls. You don't just brake and then off the brakes and then corner and then finish cornering and then accelerate. You blend them all together.
We do. And we're trying, Ross. We really are. In spite of what it looks like every time you see us at the track, we're trying. We're still in training, though. It's in the name.
Everybody's still in training.
I hope so. That's kind of.
I think you guys, you picked an appropriate title, but also you're kind of cheating because everybody is in training.
Everybody.
Well, I mean, there's cheating in racing, Ross.
What?
I've heard rumors.
Okay. Yeah.
So, Mr. Bentley, we have celebrated our 350th episode now with you.
Hmm?
Congratulations. You've officially kicked my butt.
Well, as we say every time when you say that, this is the only thing that we've ever beaten you at related to racing.
Yeah, I don't know about that, but yeah. I mean, it is pretty impressive. I know how difficult it is to do that many podcasts. Well, no, I know how difficult it is to do whatever it is, 180 podcasts.
We're almost lapping you double. We're
I
almost
know,
double.
I know,
Almost
I know.
double.
Yeah.
We don't want to
congrats on
lap
that.
you, Ross. We want more of your podcasts because they're awesome.
I'm going to do some more.
Good. That's
Yep.
excellent. It's
Yep.
the best news we've had this week.
Yeah, going to do some more, maybe more in the off season. But in the meantime, Jeff Brown and I are going to keep doing some of our no dumb questions. We do those once a month, so they're fun because it's similar to this. But what Jeff and I like about it is there's no preparation. Like we get on a call, and 30 seconds later we hit record and go, okay, that's the question we're going to answer. So it's great fun. Yeah.
Well, if you or Jeff would like to ever go on a podcast and not have to have any preparation nor have to do any editing after, which is really the problem, you can come anytime. We have an open door here, not a problem.
There you go. Maybe I'll promise that for at least episode number 500, I'll drag Jeff along.
Now we got to hurry up. All right, we're going to have 3-minute episodes from now on. We're going to get to 500 in about a month.
Recordings.
and I'll check to see whether he's up for it earlier than that. So anyway.
No worries.
Yeah.
Well, you're always welcome, and we do thank you again. It's become somewhat of a tradition here, and for some reason you tolerate us and you keep answering our emails, and I have no idea why, but it just proves, the nice people come from Canada. The nice guys.
Yeah.
Well,
come from everywhere, really.
I'm not gonna argue there. So yeah. But the only thing I'll say about that is, well, I'm sorry.
No,
that's right.
That's like the easy thing to do.
Sorry.
So.
That would
Sorry.
be. Sorry.
I'm sorry.
It's okay, Ross. We'll have you back. You can come on for 400. We're getting close.
Okay.
We're getting close to the Indy 500, so we look forward to that one. That should be a big one. That'll be fun.
Yeah. Okay, so we'll see you at number 400.
Number 400.
400 or sooner.
Okay.
Thank you, Ross.
Hopefully, we'll see you at a track sometime soon.
That would be great. I hear you have one visit we're not going to be able to attend, but I think Tim and Reese will be there. So
okay,
that'll be fun.
Okay,
Maybe
we'll see you there.
We'll see. All right. Thank you, Ross. Have a great night.
You too. Thanks,
Thank
guys.
you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. He's such a nice guy.
He is a nice guy.
Why does he tolerate us? I have no idea.
True story. I wrote him a thank you email for making the manifesto available. And he emailed me back immediately and started a conversation I was really impressed with. And then was really gracious and emailed back and forth with me for quite a while. It was really impressive.
Yeah, I have no idea why he makes so much time for everybody, but he's just so nice.
Really nice. We saw him at the Rolex this year in Daytona.
Oh, did you?
Yeah,
nice.
Reese and I. And funny enough, he recognized. He's like, "Oh yeah, you guys are the NASA guys."
He was warned. They're floating around here.
Right.